Tonight, as Mark Carney heads to India, the government is on the defensive over its shifting stance on threats to Canada.
I think that the message it's sending is that trade and economics are much more important than Canadian lives.
Outrage from the Sikh community and questions about whether Ottawa is putting trade ahead of security. Plus, Pierre Poilievre lays out his vision for Canada-U.S. relations, including his sharpest rebuke yet of Donald Trump.
There is zero chance of Canada ever being a part of the United States.
At Issue breaks down the speech and the strategy. And the fallout grows from Donald Trump's comments after the U.S. gold medal hockey wins.
I just thought the joke was distasteful and unfortunate.
Why some say it is a wake-up call for inclusivity.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. The Prime Minister is en route to India, part of his government's effort to diversify trade away from the U.S. But his trip is raising questions about whether the government is putting deals with New Delhi over the lives and safety of Sikh Canadians. A government official said that the violence and threats directed at Sikhs in Canada tied to India's government are effectively over, that Mark Carney wouldn't be doing the trip otherwise. Ottawa later said dialogue with India on the issue continues, but the reaction from members of the Sikh community is outrage. As Evan Dyer explains, for some Canadians, the threat from India is not hypothetical, not trivial, and not at all over.
As the Prime Minister departed from Mumbai, his trip was already triggering controversy after a senior government official told reporters that Ottawa believes the Indian government is no longer involved in violence and intimidation against Canada's Sikh community, and that if it was, the trip wouldn't be happening. Criticism is now coming even from within the Liberal Party.
And I personally feel that this is very disconnected from the truth and the realities that members are facing on the ground.
Members of the Sikh community say the intimidation is ongoing.
Just recently, this Sunday, one of the activists got a duty to warn, and it has gone so low that it's not only him got the duty to warn; it is his wife and children at risk.
Maninder Singh is the Sikh activist who received that threat on Sunday night in the form of a duty to warn letter from Vancouver police.
I think that the message it's sending is that trade and economics are much more important than Canadian lives, and especially Sikh lives right now.
Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangari seemed to diverge from the senior official's earlier remarks.
Doesn't sound like you're agreeing with this official, though, by what I'm suggesting is that there's still a lot more work to do, and we will do that work.
It fell to the Foreign Minister to explain that shifting message on whether the danger from India is past.
It's an extremely sensitive point, and our top priority is to ensure that we have guardrails in place to address threats to public safety and security at all levels.
The Indian government appears as keen as the Carney government to fix the relationship and says it's ready to expand trade, a major priority for Ottawa.
Well, you're an energy superpower, but you're only supplying one country. And so for you to be able to supply all of us, and we would be your biggest client, I think that is possible in the near future.
That kind of talk is, of course, music to Mark Carney's ear. He's looking to diversify Canada's exports, and India's market of almost 1.5 billion people is the biggest in the world.
Okay, but Carney is clearly facing some pressure to just slow down here.
Yeah, and Sikh associations have demands for the Conservatives, for the NDP and the Liberals, including disclosing intelligence about foreign threats and holding a public inquiry into the assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, which Ottawa has previously linked to the Indian government. And if they don't comply, the Sikh associations say they'll ban MPs and party leaders from speaking at Sikh temples and festivals.
All right, thanks, Evan. That's Evan Dyer in Ottawa.
Thanks.
After months of bad polls and bad press, with several MPs defecting to the Liberals, Pierre Poilievre is looking for a reset, delivering a speech sharply critical of Donald Trump. And as Olivia Stefanovic shows us, the departure from his usual message didn't stop there.
The Honourable Pierre Poilievre.
Facing pressure to criticize the U.S. president, the Conservative leader is taking aim. in a major policy speech in front of business leaders in Toronto.
What President Trump says about Canada is wrong.
Denouncing his 51st state threat.
It goes without saying there is zero chance of Canada ever being a part of the United States.
And after not saying Donald Trump's name once during his speech at the Conservative National Convention, Poilievre is directly calling him out.
We cannot allow President Trump to distract us from the work we need to do here at home.
Offering a rebuttal to Prime Minister Mark Carney's much talked about Davos speech.
We should not declare a permanent rupture with our biggest customer and closest neighbor in favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with Beijing.
Poilievre is also pitching a series of new policy proposals, including a new tariff-free auto pact with the U.S., a strategic energy and mineral reserve, and forming an all-party working group of parliamentarians for the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement review.
He is trying to, one, change how many Canadians view him, maybe see him more as a statesman.
The speech comes as the Carney Liberals reach their largest lead yet in some polls, and Poilievre tries to broaden his appeal.
A base strategy alone will not likely be enough for the Conservative Party of Canada to win in this environment.
This may be, a little bit too late.
But the pivot is necessary, he says, to show Poilievre can be more aggressive with Trump and offer Canadians a viable alternative to Carney.
When you've got such a huge gap in terms of approval between the two of them, he's got a lot of work to do.
Poilievre says Canada needs to gain leverage in trade talks with the U.S. He's advocating to keep Chinese electric vehicles out of Canada if Americans take Canadian vehicles back.
Still, Olivia, this new message comes as Poilievre really faces some serious challenges.
Yeah, and Poilievre is not only trying to convince Canadians, he's got a plan to address the trade war with the U.S., but his own caucus, after 3 Conservative MPs crossed the floor to join the Liberals. And concerns remain there could be more. Poilievre is also trying to counter the Prime Minister's overseas agenda, preparing to make his first international trip to Germany and the United Kingdom, just as Carney arrives in India.
All right, Olivia Stefanovich in Ottawa tonight. So expect both Poilievre's speech and the response to the Prime Minister's trip to be on the menu for Althea, Andrew, and Chantal. At Issue is coming up in about 20 minutes. Well, a new revelation tonight from OpenAI about the shooter who killed 8 people in Tumbler Ridge, BC. After first revealing her ChatGPT account was shut down for problematic behavior but not flagged to police, the company now admits she had a second account despite OpenAI's detection system meant to prevent just that. The news coming as OpenAI lays out its next steps after meeting with federal ministers yesterday and some BC officials today. The Premier, though, not among them. David Eby demanded to meet directly with the company's head, and Sam Altman has agreed to that.
I think it's important that Mr. Altman hear about how his team's decision not to bring this information forward has resulted in the devastation that I witnessed firsthand in Tumbler Ridge. I'll never be the same after talking with those families.
OpenAI says it is committing to strengthening its detection systems and its criteria for when to refer users to law enforcement. Well, Hillary Clinton faced questions today from U.S. lawmakers investigating Jeffrey Epstein, setting the stage for former U.S. President Bill Clinton's deposition on Friday. Paul Hunter with what she says she was asked about for those 6 hours behind those closed doors.
Now in the front, please, guys. When it was all over, Hillary Clinton summed up the thrust of the hearing before U.S. lawmakers this way. The same question, again and again and again.
Literally over and over again. I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices.
Jeffrey Epstein, the late sex trafficking billionaire linked to any number of high-profile associates in an ever-growing scandal that's rocked the Trump administration over allegations it has withheld some files that could implicate Donald Trump. Former President Bill Clinton appears in some of the files and photos that have been released, but like Trump, has faced no public allegation of wrongdoing. It's clear the former president was quite close with Epstein, At the 2010 wedding of his daughter Chelsea, Epstein's now jailed partner Ghislaine Maxwell was a +1. Bill Clinton will testify Friday. For her part, Hillary Clinton suggested some of the other questions she faced seemed off topic.
It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs.
In her published opening statement, she slammed Republicans who controlled the hearing, calling it a fishing expedition. If this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, she wrote, it would ask Donald Trump directly under oath. The New York Times this week reporting the Justice Department is holding from public view documents suggesting a woman told the FBI she'd been sexually assaulted by Trump and Epstein as a minor.
We're demanding immediately that we ask President Trump to testify in front of our committee.
Republicans, one of whom took heat for sneaking this photo from the closed hearing, told reporters afterward Trump testifying is unlikely.
President Trump has answered hundreds, if not thousands, of questions from you all about Epstein.
Trump's been very transparent, he said, suggesting there's no need for more. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
After a clash between Cuban soldiers and a speedboat carrying 10 men that left 4 of them dead, a U.S. official now says at least 2 of those aboard were American citizens.
Las autoridades del gobierno estadounidense.
Cuba's government said Washington appeared willing to cooperate in clarifying what happened. It said the men were armed with assault rifles, handguns, and homemade explosives, and that they fired on Cuban forces when confronted. The survivors are being treated in hospital under heavy guard. Well, tonight, there is no clear resolution after a 3rd round of crucial talks between the U.S. and Iran, with the threat of a full-scale war looming. Chris Brown looks at the key sticking points.
A decisive day of diplomacy in Geneva saw the limos with U.S. and Iranian delegations coming and going, and eventually ending with a plan to meet again next week, which likely counts as progress.
The costs of failure are now very clear to all sides. Everybody understands that although there is a military option, there is no military solution to this dilemma.
U.S. President Donald Trump had said he'd prefer a deal with Iran over war. But a deal on what? Iran says its nuclear program is peaceful, and Trump declared it obliterated after joint strikes with Israel.
They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon.
Other U.S. officials have raised the threat of Iran's ballistic missiles. Israel is also pushing for their elimination. In January, Trump threatened Iran over its deadly crackdown on massive protests, at one point telling demonstrators that help was on the way. But there's been little talk of that lately, even as security forces tried to put down new protests that erupted this week. CBC News was sent this voice message from a 22-year-old woman in Iran, disguising her voice for safety.
We have reached a crisis and a disaster, and the government has no solution. They can wipe off the blood of the streets.
Iran wants sanctions relief and insists it will not give up the right to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes. Driving home the potential consequences of no agreement is the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East in decades. Iran's foreign minister told state TV that both sides have entered into elements of agreement and that technical talks, which could indicate more detailed negotiations, will start next week. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
The Alberta government's latest budget projects a more than $9 billion deficit. It is the 2nd consecutive deficit for the oil-rich province. As Aaron Collins shows us, going into the red is becoming a trend in other provinces too.
The Honourable President of Treasury Board and Minister of Finance.
No sugarcoating this bad news budget.
Let's cut to the chase. If this budget is passed, Alberta will face a deficit of $9.4 billion this fiscal year.
Lots of red ink, but no major cuts, no big tax hikes, and bumps in health and education spending. Those choices, this budget breaking Alberta's own rules against running deficits.
We created these rules and I'm breaking them. So it bothers nobody more than it does me.
As always, the price of oil, the primary driver of Alberta's bottom line. U.S. tariff and trade policies causing energy prices to slump.
We've seen a $9 billion decrease in resource revenue, from last year.
The opposition critical of the government's response.
This is a placeholder budget with a strategy that is only cross your fingers and hope the price of oil goes up.
This political watcher says running a deficit may not be a huge political risk.
Albertans aren't particularly fiscally conservative. They don't like cuts to social programs. They don't like increased taxes.
BC and Nova Scotia also announced deficits in recent days. Saskatchewan's premier signaling one is coming there, too.
There are revenue challenges due to the trade uncertainty, market uncertainty around the world.
Provinces in the red, a theme this fiscal season.
We're likely to see wider deficits and more persistent deficits over the near to medium term.
So bad news budgets, a trend across Canada. Here in Alberta, the plan appears to be to just hang on and wait for the price of oil to rebound, continuing to ride the roller coaster of volatile energy prices. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
A Fifth Estate Radio-Canada investigation into spit hoods used to protect first responders from bodily fluids found they were involved in more than a dozen deaths in Canada. As Bridget Noel shows us, despite the risks they pose, they're used all over the country, even on minors, largely unchecked. And a warning, some of the images you're about to see are disturbing.
Stephanie Harvey said she'd never heard of spit hoods until she discovered her brother was wearing one when he died.
Si, là, il n'y aurait pas eu les vidéos, on n'aurait jamais su qu'il y avait eu un masque, là.
28-year-old Bruno Pierre Harvey was going through a mental health crisis when Quebec City Police intervened, forcing his head into a mesh and fabric hood meant to prevent him from spitting. He died moments later. His is one of 17 deaths involving spit hoods identified by the Fifth Estate. In nearly all instances, the spit hood seems to have been misused.
Is it safe to use a spit hood on a person who's very much in crisis?
No.
Retired police officer Michael Laruda is a crisis intervention expert and an authority on the use of spit masks.
It's a restraining piece of equipment. There must be a protocol put into place before and after the use of the mask.
Yet our investigation found these protocols, when they exist, are not always followed. While it says right on the label that misuse can be deadly, some first responders never receive specialized training.
The most popular spit hood in Canada is this model, the transport hood. It was invented by an American carpet installer who got the idea while watching cop shows. Our investigation revealed it's never been certified by Canadian regulators. In fact, none of the federal or provincial departments we contacted took responsibility. Meanwhile, experts say there exists little reliable data on the safety of these devices.
Generally, the studies are pretty limited. They tend to be healthy individuals that are volunteers.
We couldn't find any studies about spit hood use on children, but we discovered the RCMP and most provinces and territories allow spit hoods to be used on minors.
We shouldn't use it on children. There is a traumatizing part to it.
Around the world, several jurisdictions have started to restrict or ban the use of this device. But in Canada, many institutions continue to rely on them with no plan to review how or when they are used. Brigitte Noel, CBC News, Montreal.
You can watch The Fifth Estate's Last Breath now on YouTube, or you can catch the full episode this Friday on CBC TV and GEM at 9 p.m. Eastern or 9:30 in Newfoundland. Well, both U.S. hockey teams secured gold at the Olympics. We know you know that. But it's the women now demanding respect after a comment from Donald Trump.
Now I have to sort of sit, and anybody has to sit in front of you and explain someone else's behavior. It's not my responsibility.
The renewed push to see the sport made more inclusive for young girls. And later, does your sunscreen hold up in the lab?
I mean, you'd hope for some consistency. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Marketplace puts SPF labels to the test to see if you're getting the protection you were promised. We're back in 2.
First Game 7 since 2019, started by that guy right there, Max Scherzer.
Two-time World Series champion Max Scherzer is reportedly set to rejoin the Toronto Blue Jays for the 2026 season on a one-year deal worth $3 million. The 41-year-old pitcher, nicknamed Mad Max for his fiery personality on the mound, was a key part of the Jays' World Series run last year. Well, reaction continues to roll in to what many see as a giant show of disrespect for the U.S. women's hockey team in Milan. The locker room laughter from the men on a call with Donald Trump. Tanya Fletcher with how players on both teams are responding to the controversy tonight.
5 days after both the U.S. men's and women's hockey teams won Olympic gold, what happened next continues to steal the spotlight.
We're going to have to bring the women's team, you do know that.
U.S. President Donald Trump joked at the women's expense as the men laughed along.
I just thought the joke was distasteful and unfortunate. Now I have to sort of sit, and anybody has to sit in front of you and explain someone else's behavior. It's not my responsibility.
The men are also facing questions about their response to that locker room call.
Why would you laugh when they got invited?
I mean, I don't really have an answer. Honestly, it was just a whirlwind of a moment.
Certainly sorry for how we responded to it in that moment. You know, things that just happened really quick there.
You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, that kind of occurred. You know, we have nothing but love and respect for the women's team.
This is definitely a dark cloud, and it's unfortunate.
Jody Vance was the first woman in Canada to host a TV sports show in primetime. She's hopeful all of this will ultimately build momentum for women's sport.
I like it being in the conversation that things have to change. We thought they'd changed more than they have, and I think that's where the disappointment lies.
As the Olympians head back to home ice, that disappointment is felt by some local fans, too.
We have little girls that see that, and we have little boys that see that, and they're taught to just go along with it.
As the women they look up to carve a path forward, they have a message for young hockey hopefuls.
We need to stay positive. We need to stay strong together. We need to focus on the right things.
Their voice is being amplified now more than ever. A silver lining to a gold controversy. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
CBC's Marketplace is putting sunscreen under the microscope to see if you can trust what's on the bottle.
The SPF is really a crude indication of how well a product protects you.
We find out if your SPF is delivering on its promise. After the break, Rosie's here with that issue. Hello.
Hi, Adrienne. Tonight we're going to talk about Prime Minister Carney's trip to India and the security concerns that follow.
We're raising these issues with India and with the officials that will carry Canadian concerns forward.
So how is Canada balancing trade deals with public safety? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and more.
Doctors recommend sunscreen to protect against the harmful effects of the sun. But a CBC Marketplace investigation has found some SPF label ratings don't match what's actually in the bottle. The team sent samples to several labs for testing. Christine Birak tells us the surprising results and why experts say Health Canada should take action.
Ultraviolet radiation hits our skin year-round. Most of those dark spots are sun damage. Studies show sunscreen is safe. But Marketplace testing found SPF numbers can be unreliable.
You'll never get the protection on the bottle.
Experts say lab testing is standardized, but results vary widely.
The SPF is really a crude indication of how well a product protects you.
We sent an SPF 50 sunscreen to 5 testing labs and got back 5 different SPF numbers, ranging from 60 all the way down to 15.
I mean, you'd hope for some consistency. I mean, that's ridiculous.
To measure SPF, labs still use human test subjects, expose them to UV light with and without sunscreen.
You're causing a burn, which is an inflammatory response, and that's a very variable thing.
It's going to touch your back for a second.
Scientists then examine the burn to calculate SPF, but given how many variables there are,
do you think that such a specific SPF number on the label makes sense?
You have a point, absolutely.
Labs also use a precise amount of sunscreen. We did the math. It's a lot.
It took me 3 goes at it.
Companies are only required to test a product once at one lab on 10 people. They're not required to submit those results to Health Canada unless asked. In 2022, the owner of AMA, an American test lab, went to prison. The company had been fabricating SPF data for 30 years, yet no products were recalled in Canada.
Whether that be the manufacturer, well, Health Canada and such, I expect what they put on that label is pretty darn close to what's in that bottle because it is our health.
She argues if SPF really is a range, the label should say so. Some protection is always better than none, but Canadians deserve to know what they're actually buying. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
You can watch the full episode of this week's Marketplace Sunscreen Secrets this Friday on CBC TV at 8 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 in Newfoundland. Ottawa has eased its stance on India as Mark Carney heads to the country looking to reset that relationship. Rosie's here with that issue.
At issue tonight, Mark Carney's Indo-Pacific trip. The Prime Minister heads to India to strengthen trade ties, but concerns around transnational repression continue.
We are there to elevate the Canada-India relationship, and part and parcel of that elevation involves ensuring that we have the dialogue about public safety and security at the highest levels.
India's High Commissioner to Canada says they will work together.
We are tackling it up front, working together with Canada. That's how mature democracies work. You work together by tackling the problems that are there between you.
So what's been made of the PM's trip to India? Is this government choosing trade over security concerns? How does it balance both of them? I'm Rosemary Barton here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, nice to see all of you. This all comes, of course, after this senior Canadian official said in a briefing before reporters left with the Prime Minister that this was that India wasn't really a threat anymore. I will say I also interviewed Anita Anand today, who did not repeat those comments in any way, shape, or form. But I think it did raise a lot of eyebrows. So, Andrew, give me your perspective about whether this is, whether Canadians should be concerned that the Prime Minister is headed over there to do trade deals, and there are still people here in this country who feel concerned about their own safety.
Yeah, it should raise eyebrows about the quality of the advice the Prime Minister is getting. It would be news to CSIS, for example, which late last year issued a report saying that India, along with China, was a major national security threat. It would be news to members of the Sikh community, one of whom just recently was given a police order, a police warning that its life was in danger. It would be news to authorities in the United States where a Indian national, I think, pleaded guilty. I think it was either to murder or attempted murder, allegedly at the behest of the Indian government. This issue is still a live issue. People, I think, might understand that the demands of realpolitik, the demands of a very changed international trade and security environment mean we've got to make parley with countries that we might still have serious issues with, but you'd hope that people would go in with clear eyes and a sense of the trade-offs involved, and not on the basis that India is no longer any kind of threat to national security or to Canadian citizens.
I was very confused by this headline and briefing, Althea, and I will say, when speaking with the minister, I was less confused because she seems quite aware of what the relationship is and how to look at it. But give me your perspective on what you think this all means.
Bad omen for the beginning of this trip to India. It kind of makes you think of the Justin Trudeau disastrous trip to India. I'm not talking about the costumes, but I'm talking about his national security advisor giving journalists a briefing, and it turned out to be quite the brouhaha. You kind of start off with another official making statements, as Andrew talked about. I mean, 3 times in the course of that briefing, which was mostly led by this person, did they say that they believe the government, if the government believed that India was actively interfering in Canadian democratic processes, they would probably not be taking this trip. A version of this 3 times was told to reporters, while at the same time saying, we have these robust processes in place to deal with foreign interference, which, by the way, they were all pointing to the stuff that the Trudeau government did. And then saying, but you know, like the Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, has sat down with her counterpart, and we've basically both agreed to not engage in each other's domestic affairs. It is striking because it sounds like the government is not saying, we know there are these concerns, and we are working to address them, but at the same time, the relationship is bigger, and we need to be resetting the relationship and kind of catching up to where the rest of our allies are. Instead, what they're saying is this problem doesn't exist, and your concerns in diaspora groups, you're making, these are allegations, and we're going to investigate them on a case-by-case basis. This is what this person said. So it makes it seem like you have no clue what's actually going on, and what you're telling Canadians doesn't match with law enforcement, intelligence, and the people that had this person's old job before saying, whoa, this would be news to me. If you don't if you don't look for anything, then you don't see anything. And that's kind of the message that happened this week.
I will say, just so the viewers understand, the senior official is not someone we can name. That was the agreement of the briefing, but it is a public servant, someone who would be advising the Prime Minister on these issues. Chantal.
It does sound and fit the box of willful blindness. You are telling Canadians that we expelled 6 diplomats 16 months ago. We don't routinely expel 1. And now nothing, it's all good and everything is happening, which sounds like you're trying to say what the government would like you to say, which doesn't make sense, i.e. We wouldn't be going there if everything wasn't solved. Well, does anybody who know anything about that file believe that all those problems were solved? Now, Mark Carney still has it in his power to change course or to correct course. The problem is that I'm guessing those people doing the briefing were thinking, we're not going to sound like there is still a problem because the Prime Minister wants to make deals and he doesn't want a problem. I don't think the Prime Minister can afford to just walk in there and say, yeah, this briefing is what we believe. Everything is now great because we had this talk eye to eye and it's all good, which no one in this country should believe.
So where does that leave the trip then, Andrew? I mean, obviously the minister was sort of trying to clean up some of this stuff before she heads over to join the Prime Minister in India. But where does it leave the idea that he's going over there to make business deals, and some people now saying, well, at what cost?
I would hope that it would not, I mean, we'll see, but I would hope it would not just be about business. I would hope that this would be the opportunity for some clarification, if we can put it that way. Because you've had examples of both types of errors, if you can put it that way. You've had Indian government calling things that are basically speech issues, calling them an example of terrorism. At the same time, you've got Canadian politicians playing footsie with very bad actors and defending it in the name of free speech. And of course, I dissociate myself from violence, but I'm going to help to glorify some martyr or other. So we need both sides to sort of have a clear understanding of what is and is not acceptable in that regard. We should also bear in mind it's not just about transnational repression or violence against Canadian citizens. There's also credible evidence that the Indian government was involved in trying to interfere with, I think it was 2 successive federal conservative leadership races. So that's also, it should be on the agenda. Again, what exactly we can come to agreement on, but I would hope they would be in the midst of all this, pressing India on this.
Okay, good first conversation. I'm going to leave this part there. When we come back, though, we're going to take a look at another big political moment today. Pierre Poilievre's talking about Donald Trump and rebuking him.
The president's talk of 51st statehood, whether it is a joke or not, is unacceptable.
What does this tell us about Poilievre's plan to deal with Donald Trump? What does it mean for Pierre Poilievre's leadership in this moment? That's next. At issue, Pierre Poilievre talks Donald Trump. The conservative leader laid out a definitive rebuke of the U.S. president.
What President Trump says about Canada is wrong.
And offered a rebuttal of parts of Carney's Davos speech.
We should not declare a permanent rupture with our biggest customer and closest neighbor,
while promising his party's assistance in upcoming renegotiations.
We will work together where we can. We will oppose where we must. because loyal opposition is not just our job title, it is our national interest.
So what's been made of Pierre Poilievre's vision for Canada-U.S. relations? What does it tell us about his strategy for dealing with the U.S.? Let's bring everyone back. Chantal, Andrew, Althea. Althea, what did you make of the speech?
I thought it was a good speech, good politics. I think this is the type of speech that he can give to his base, that he can give to the boomers that have decided that they don't trust him. There are basically two markers of differentiations that he is creating. He is saying that Mark Carney has diagnosed the problem properly, but he's going after the wrong strategy. We cannot move completely beyond the United States, and we need to focus on that relationship. Kind of this too will pass. There will be another president, and we are trying to, or Mark Carney is trying to change things that are going to take a generational to fix. And instead, what we should be doing is using our leverage in Canada to have a tariff-free relationship with the United States, a stronger relationship when it comes to defense. And so there are two clear different visions there that I think can speak to a whole swath of Canadians. The other thing he's doing is laying the groundwork to say Mark Carney has failed to live up to the promises. The things that Mark Carney has promised in the last election that he was going to do, great, get major projects built, get a pipeline built, make us an energy superpower. He has not delivered on these things. And so he's giving the Prime Minister, he's not coming out right away with the criticism, but he's laying the path to build the argument. And that too is smart.
So is it enough, Chantal, and is it too little too late, I think is the other fair question.
Well, that all depends on what follows this, because a lot of Canadians have made up their minds about Pierre Poilievre, and the result is not terribly positive. But I think first, as a country, we should recognize that it's good news that on the notion of not giving away the shop, not bending because Donald Trump's administration asked for this, our political parties are pretty much united. And that speech kind of confirms it. Yes, there will be differences in approaches, what you should be doing. But I was listening to Dominique Leblanc in Toronto on one screen and Pierre Poilievre on the other. There were times when they seemed to be saying the same thing at the same time. That's pretty rare in Canadian politics. Yeah, sure. I agree with him here. He's playing the long game. First audience caucus, I'm a serious person. He's going off on trips, something that he, outside the country as leader of the opposition, something he'd refused to do. So basically he wants to be part of the conversation, but with the thought that when that conversation sours in a year and a half, maybe then Canadians will want to look at someone who says, I could have this conversation on different terms. So it was, I think, a good day.
A good day, but Andrew, again, I guess my question, and no one can answer it, does it really change anything materially? I mean, he had been criticized, a year ago, really, for not talking about Donald Trump, for not talking about it enough during the election, for not talking about it at the convention. Here he's finally talking about it. Is that the thing that's going to make the difference for him?
Well, as my colleagues have said, it depends on what the follow-up is. It's the same thing with the Prime Minister. It depends what the follow-up is on his strategy that he's outlined. But look, it was a change in tone. It was statesmanlike. We should mention after about a week of fairly disgraceful demagoguery on the immigration and refugee file. But this was a more high-minded Pierre Poilievre that we saw. There was a nod towards cooperation. There was a shake of the fist at Donald Trump. All that's well and good. And there was, yes, the beginning of an outlining of a somewhat different strategy than the Prime Minister's. The Prime Minister is placing more emphasis on the external dimension of diversifying our trade, of diversifying our alliances. Mr. Poilievre is placing more emphasis on internal resilience, internal economic strength. Of course, what you want to do is both.
The Prime Minister's doing both, too, I will say. I mean, we'll see whether he follows through.
That's right.
But it's going to be a pipeline and stuff. Yeah.
Right. But more of the emphasis has been on diversifying away from the United States. Poilievre is saying, look, there's very little we can actually diversify, certainly in the short term. So let's be, he's placing more of the emphasis on getting a successful trade negotiation. I think he's overestimating the leverage that we have. That word leverage comes up many times in the speech. There were some interesting proposals, but whether those could actually bring to bear somebody like Donald Trump, I think, is another question entirely. But it does allow him to take a lot of his existing policies about internal trade and energy and everything else, and dress them up as a national security policy. And fair enough, that is part of the mix.
Yeah, Chantal, I also think that the clip we played at the end there is an important one. That yes, he will support the government, but it's also his job to oppose and hold the government to account, and that is not in itself something that threatens this country. That is actually helps democracy. It strengthens democracy.
I tend to agree with that. That the best ideas come when there are people around for kicking tires to see if they're going to take you the distance. The last thing you want is everyone saying the same thing and not testing ideas. So I believe that is the proper role of the official opposition, not to veer off topic, which has been kind of the strategy for Pierre Poilievre until now, being to say, we need to talk about other things. They're all important, but they have taken the Conservative Party out of a conversation where they need to be. And by the way, I did notice that there was in their support for a more open trade relationship with India.
The other thing I think we might want to note is the regional dimension of this. It's no accident that where the speech was given and to whom it was given. There is a lot of unease amongst the big business community, particularly in Southern Ontario, about the trade relationship with the United States. They tend to be particularly focused on that. Mr. Poilievre's particular proposal of we'll stop Chinese autos from coming into Canada in return for the United States letting them into the United States, that will certainly play well in Southern Ontario. When the inevitable Chinese retaliation comes on some other product that we make in some other part of the country, that may not be quite as easily defended.
Last 30 seconds to you there, Althea.
Well, he wasn't pushed to explain the trade-offs, right? I think then follow-up questions are like, what would you do about supply management, for example? But there were some good consumer suggestions, like forget about the EV stuff, like let's give people, instead of the HST, off their new cars. What I wanted to say was on the comment about the challenge function. Because the Conservatives are so scared of an election, they actually are not playing that challenge function in the House of Commons and in committees where they should be doing it. The government is passing through, frankly, flawed legislation that the senators are having to look at completely because the people on the House side are too afraid to stand up to the government. And so this committee, this is how he framed this, this was a multi-partisan committee to talk about Canada-U.S. relations, is really smart because it actually puts the Conservatives at the table. It looks like they're being like post-partisan, let's all work together, kumbaya, while also giving them access to information with which they can criticize the government. So good politics on both sides.
Yeah, it gets them into the conversation, which has been the biggest problem that they've been having for some time.
And gives them levers to criticize the government without any consequences.
Thank you all very much. That is Althea likes the last word, you guys. That's it for At Issue on The National. We're going to continue this conversation and talk about OpenAI and concerns over how the government is or is not regulating artificial intelligence. Now back to Adrienne in Toronto.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. Coming up, some very clever rats get behind the wheel.
I was very skeptical about whether they would be able to drive the vehicle.
Not the only one. How a BC couple taught their rodents to drive. Next in our moment. So here's a not half bad way to get out of rush hour traffic. This is Cuzco and Kronk, pictured here behind the wheel of their very own mini taxi in Squamish, BC. So how do you teach a pet rat to drive? Apparently a lot of patience and a lot of food, of course. Their driving lessons make our moment.
I was very skeptical about whether they would be able to drive the vehicle. Rats are very quick to learn. They're extremely food motivated.
They realized pressing the pedal gets me closer to this treat. There's 3 pedals, and the center one accelerates it forward, left turns it left, and right turns it right.
It's cool when you see them understanding.
You get to know their individual personalities. Kronk. He was the definitely the more boisterous and chaotic driver, and Cusco was a little more methodical.
I created a garage for him that he could pull the rope on to open the door and then get in the vehicle and drive out.
Our little girl Spark, she'll just drive on her own, like off around the house sometimes. It's not really getting anywhere.
They operate the vehicle in a similar way to us. However, their eyesight is very poor. They use their sense of smell mainly to direct themselves.
There's no limit to what they can learn with that big brain of theirs.
So I can't help it. I look at this and, you know, as a Canadian, I immediately think of Hammy Hamster, Tales of the Riverbank. Lucky enough that my dad used to work on that show, and he'd say he loved it, except, of course, when the hamsters ate the set, because that just got complicated. From all of us at The National, thanks for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.